Part 1. The sacred protocol Admiral Vextar pressed her clawed hand against the cold metal wall of the observation deck. Through the thick glass, she could see the blue-green planet of Kepler 442b spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Beautiful. White clouds drifted across its surface, hiding the horror that was happening below. The planet was dying. Vexitar's green skin turned darker as she watched another bright flash appear on the planet's night side. Another nuclear explosion. Another city gone. Another million lives ended in seconds. "Admiral," came a voice from behind her. Lieutenant Koss, a young officer with silver scales covering his tall frame, stepped forward carefully. "The morning. Reports are ready." "Tell me," Vextar said without turning around. "The Kahari are fighting harder now. The Northern Alliance dropped 3 more bombs on Southern Coalition cities during the night. The Southern Coalition responded with 5 of their own." Koss paused, checking his data pad. "Current death count is at 47 million and rising." Vextar closed her yellow eyes. 47 million. Just yesterday it was 42 million. The numbers kept growing, and there was nothing she could do about it. "What about their space stations?" she asked. "Still evacuating people. The orbital habitats are packed full. They have maybe 6 months of supplies left, but the fighting down on the planet is getting worse. More refugees arrive every day." Vextar nodded slowly. She had been watching the Kahari for 3 years now, ever since they entered what the Galactic Concordat called the trial phase. It was the most dangerous time for any developing species. The trial phase happened when a species first developed nuclear weapons and space travel at the same time. It was when they had to choose between working together to reach the stars or destroying themselves with their new weapons. Most species failed. The statistics were clear and cruel. Only 77% of species survived their trial phase. The Kahari were not going to be one of the lucky ones. "Admiral," Koss said quietly, "the crew is asking questions again." "What kind of questions?" "They want to know why we don't help, why we just watch. Some of the younger officers think we should do something." Vextar turned to face him. Her yellow eyes were tired, ancient. She had been part of the Concordat for over 200 years. She had watched 17 different species go through their trial phase. Only 12 had survived. "Because of the sacred protocol," she said, her voice heavy with the weight of law and tradition. "We cannot interfere. We cannot help. We cannot even let them know we exist." "But Admiral, they're dying down there. Millions of them. We could stop the war. We have the technology. We could destroy everything the galaxy stands for." Vextar cut him off. "The sacred protocol isn't just a rule, Lieutenant. It's the foundation of our entire civilization." She walked past him to the center of the observation deck. A holographic display showed the Kahari homeworld in detail. Red dots marked the locations of recent nuclear strikes. Blue areas showed the safe zones where civilians were trying to survive. 3,000 years ago, Vextar began, the galaxy was very different. Species that developed space travel early would find younger species and try to help them. They would share technology, stop wars, cure diseases. Do you know what happened? Koss shook his head. Those younger species never learned to solve problems on their own. They became dependent, weak. When the older species couldn't help them anymore, they collapsed completely. Entire civilizations died because they never learned to stand on their own feet. The Admiral walked to another display showing the history of the galaxy. Images of dead worlds, failed colonies, and extinct species filled the screen. The Great Wars happened because different older species had different ideas about how to help younger ones. They fought over who had the right to guide new civilizations. Billions died. Entire sectors of the galaxy became battlefields. "So we created the sacred protocol," Koss said, understanding beginning to show in his silver eyes. "Exactly. No advanced species may interfere with a trial phase species, no matter what happens, no matter how much it hurts to watch. Each species must find its own way to the stars, or fail trying. It's the only way to make sure they're truly ready for the galaxy. A soft beep came from the communication console. The Night Watch officer, a short being with purple fur, looked up nervously. "Admiral, we're getting strange readings from the system's edge." Vextar frowned. "What kind of readings?" "Energy signatures, ma'am. Big ones. It looks like ships." The Admiral felt her heart skip a beat. "Ships? Here? In a restricted trial phase system? Put it on the main display," she ordered. The hologram changed to show the outer edges of the Kepler 442 system. At first, there was nothing but empty space and distant stars. Then the sensors adjusted, and Vextar saw something that made her blood run cold. Ships, lots of them, more than she could count at first glance. They were emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation, their hulls dark against the starfield. "How many?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The sensor officer was working frantically at his console. "I count 215 ships, Admiral, maybe more. They're still coming out of hyperspace. 200 ships. That was bigger than most concordant fleets. Who were they? And why were they here?" "Can you identify them?" Vextar asked. "Match them against the ship database?" "I'm trying, Admiral, but—" The officer looked confused. "These designs aren't in our database. The energy signatures are completely unknown. I've never seen anything like this." Vextar stared at the display. Unknown ships, unknown technology, arriving in a trial phase system where no one was supposed to interfere. "What's their heading?" she asked. They're heading straight for Kepler 442b, Admiral." The observation deck fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Someone was about to violate the sacred protocol. Someone was about to commit the greatest crime in galactic law. "Red alert," Vextar ordered. "All stations battle ready. Send an emergency message to Concordate Command. Tell them we have an unknown fleet approaching a trial phase world with apparent hostile intent." Alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The lights dimmed and turned red. Officers ran to their stations, preparing for whatever was about to happen. "Admiral," the communications officer called out. "I'm trying to hail the unknown fleet." Any response? "Yes, ma'am. They're responding on standard galactic frequencies. Audio coming through now." A voice filled the observation deck. It was strange, speaking in a language that the ship's computers were struggling to translate. But when the translation came through, the words made Vextar's world turn upside down. "This is Admiral Chen of the Terran Defense Corps. We are responding to the crisis on Kepler 442b. We're here to help." Terran. The word hit Vextar like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, her legs suddenly weak. "Admiral?" Koss stepped forward, concerned. "Are you all right?" "Terran," she whispered. "They said Terran." "I don't understand, ma'am." Vextar walked slowly to her command console and pulled up the galactic database. Her clawed fingers shook as she entered the search term. "Terra, Sol System, Earth." The file came up immediately. She had read it before, many times, every concordate. Officer knew the story of Earth. 153 years ago, she said, her voice distant. There was a species called humans. They lived on a planet called Earth, in the Sol system. They entered their trial phase right on schedule. We were watching them, just like we're watching the Kahari now. The file showed images of the blue planet Earth, cities full of humans, their primitive but impressive technology, their early space stations and moon colonies. "What happened to them?" Koss asked. "They were doing well at first. They had stopped most of their wars. They were working together more. We thought they might actually make it." Vexatar's voice got quieter. Then their communications stopped. All of them. Overnight. She brought up the final reports from the Sol system. "Our monitoring station detected massive nuclear exchanges. The entire planet was hit. Cities destroyed. Billions dead. When the radiation cleared enough for us to scan properly, we found no signs of civilization left. They failed their trial phase. Koss said. They didn't just fail. They destroyed themselves completely. It was one of the worst trial phase failures we had ever recorded. Vextar looked back at the display showing the unknown fleet. But if those ships are really Terran, then humans didn't go extinct, the communications officer finished. They survived. More than survived, Vextar said, staring at the massive fleet on her screens. Look at those ships. Look at that technology. Those energy signatures are beyond anything in our database. If humans really built those ships, then they didn't just survive their trial phase. She paused, the full meaning of what she was seeing finally hitting her. They mastered it, and now they're here to interfere with another species' trial phase. The communication console beeped again. The unknown fleet was getting closer to Kepler 442b. Soon they would be in orbit around the dying world. Admiral, Koss said quietly. What do we do? Vextar looked at her young officer. She looked at her crew, all waiting for orders. She looked at the display showing the mysterious human fleet approaching the Kahari homeworld. For 3,000 years, the sacred protocol had kept the galaxy stable. For 3,000 years, no one had dared to violate it. We watch, she said finally. We record everything, and... Part 2. The impossibility Admiral Vextar had not slept in 36 hours. She stood in the command center of her ship, watching the human fleet get closer to Kepler 442b. The coffee in her cup had gone cold hours ago, but she kept drinking it anyway. Admiral, Lieutenant Koss approached her with a data pad. We've finished analyzing the human ships. What did you find? Koss looked uncomfortable. That's the problem, ma'am. We can't figure out how they work. Vexatar raised an eyebrow. The Galactic Concordat had the most advanced technology in the known galaxy. They could analyze any ship, any weapon, any piece of equipment. How could they not understand human technology? Show me, she said. Koss activated a holographic display. A detailed image of a human ship appeared in the air between them. It was sleek and dark, with strange curves that seemed to bend light around them. Look at this, Koss pointed to the rear of the ship. We can't find any engines. No plasma drives, no fusion rockets, no antimatter cores. Nothing, but the ships are moving faster than our best cruisers. Maybe the engines are hidden? We've scanned with everything we have. Deep penetration scanners, quantum sensors, gravitational wave detectors. There's nothing there that should make these ships move. Vextar studied the image. The human ship looked almost alive, like it was swimming through space instead of flying. What about weapons? She asked. That's even stranger. We can detect energy buildups that look like weapon systems, but the power levels don't make sense. Some of these ships are generating more energy than our space stations. Another officer, a tall, blue-skinned woman named Commander Drill, walked over to them. Admiral, we've been trying to understand their communication systems, too. The results are impossible. Impossible how? They're talking to each other instantly. Not just ship to ship in the same area. The entire fleet, spread across thousands of kilometers, is communicating with zero delay. Vextar felt a chill run down her spine. Instant communication across vast distances meant only one thing. Quantum entanglement networks, she whispered. That's what we think too, Commander Drill nodded. But Admiral, quantum entanglement communication is theoretical. Our best scientists have been working on it for centuries. They say it might be possible in another 1,000 years. And the humans have it now. Yes, ma'am. Vexatar looked back at the display. 215 ships, all equipped with technology that shouldn't exist, all heading toward a planet where they weren't supposed to interfere. Admiral, the communications officer called out, the human fleet is entering orbit around Kepler 442b. Show me. The main display changed to show the Kahari homeworld. The human ships were spreading out around the planet in a perfect sphere formation. As they watched, smaller ships began separating from the larger ones. "Those look like transport ships," Koss observed. "Where are they going?" The sensor officer worked quickly at his console. "They're heading for the Kahari orbital stations, the ones with all the refugees." Vextar's hearts began beating faster. This was it. The humans were about to make contact with a trial phase species. They were about to violate the sacred protocol. "Admiral," the communications officer said urgently, "I'm picking up transmissions from the human ships to the Kahari stations." "In Kahari language?" "Yes, ma'am." "Perfect Kahari language." Vextar stared at him. "That's impossible. First contact with the Kahari happened less than 2 hours ago. How could they learn the language so fast?" "I don't know, Admiral, but they're speaking. Like they've known it for years." The main display showed the human transport ships docking with Kahari orbital stations. Within minutes, figures in strange white suits were moving through the station corridors. "Are those humans?" Commander Drill asked. "We think so. The body shapes match what we know about human anatomy from our old records." Vextar watched in fascination and horror as the humans began working alongside the Kahari refugees. They were carrying medical supplies, food, and equipment that the overcrowded stations desperately needed. "Admiral," Koss said quietly, "look at this." He brought up a recording from one of the Kahari stations. The image was grainy, but clear enough to see what was happening. A human in a white suit was treating injured Kahari civilians. The humans' movements were quick and sure, like they had treated Kahari injuries many times before. "How do they know Kahari physiology?" Vextar asked. "How do they know what medicines to use?" "Admiral, there's more," the communications officer said. "I'm picking up human transmissions to the planet's surface. They're contacting both sides of the war." "Both sides?" "Yes, ma'am. They're talking to the Northern Alliance and the Southern Coalition at the same time." Vextar walked closer to the communications console. "Can you let me hear?" "Yes, Admiral. Routing audio now." A calm human voice filled the command center. The Sao. Words were being translated from Kahari, but the tone was clear, peaceful, confident, and somehow familiar. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the Terran Medical Corps. We know you're at war. We know you're afraid. We've been where you are now. We want to help." The Kahari voice that responded was shaky with fear and confusion. "Who are you? Where did you come from? How did you find us?" "We're humans. We come from a planet called Earth, far away from here. 150 years ago, we were just like you. We had nuclear weapons. We were fighting wars. We almost destroyed ourselves." Vextar felt her legs grow weak. She had to sit down. "But we learned," the human voice continued. "We found a way to work together. We survived. And now we help other species who are going through the same thing we did." "That's impossible," Commander Drill whispered. "According to our records, Earth was completely destroyed. We saw the nuclear exchanges. We detected the radiation." "Admiral," Lieutenant Koss said, his voice full of disbelief, "what if our records are wrong?" Before Vextar could answer, the communications officer held up his hand. "Wait, there's more. The humans are doing something on the planet's surface." The main display changed to show the northern continent of Kepler 442b. Strange energy signatures were appearing at multiple locations. "What are those?" Vextar asked. "Some kind of communication nodes," the sensor officer replied. "The humans are setting up a network across the entire planet." "A communication network? During an active war?" "Yes, Admiral, and it's working. Look at this." The display showed communication patterns across the planet. For the first time in months, the Northern Alliance and Southern Coalition were talking to each other instead of just shooting. "This is impossible," Commander Drill said. "You can't just stop a nuclear war by setting up phone lines." But that seemed to be exactly what the humans were doing. On the display, they could see the red dots marking nuclear strikes. New ones had stopped appearing. "Admiral," the communications officer said, excitement in his voice, "the fighting has stopped. Both sides have agreed to a ceasefire. A ceasefire? After 3 years of war? The humans convinced them to try talking instead of fighting. They're setting up peace negotiations. Vexitar stood up slowly. Her mind was struggling to process what she was seeing. In less than 12 hours, the humans had arrived at Kepler 442b, made contact with a desperate species, somehow learned their language and biology, provided medical aid, stopped a nuclear war, and started peace talks. How? She whispered. How is any of this possible? Admiral, Koss said, looking at his datapad. I think I know why they're so good at this. Tell me. I've been analyzing their ship movements and communication patterns. This isn't the first time they've done this. What do you mean? Koss brought up a new display showing the human fleet's formation patterns and tactical movements. These ships work together like they've done this exact mission many times before. The way they position themselves, the way they approach the orbital stations, the way they contacted both sides of the war, it's all too smooth, too perfect. Commander Drill understood first. You're saying they've saved other species before? I think so. I think the humans have been doing this for years, maybe decades, saving species in their trial phase. Vexitar felt dizzy. If that was true, then everything the Concordat believed was wrong. If species could be saved through outside help, if the sacred protocol was not necessary. Admiral, the communications officer interrupted her thoughts. Priority message from Concordat Command. Put it through. The image of Fleet Admiral Corax appeared on the main display. His red scales were darker than usual, a sign of extreme anger. Admiral Vexitar, he said, his voice cold as space. Explain to me why there are unknown ships interfering with a trial phase species. Sir, the ships are human. From Earth. We thought they were extinct, but I don't care what they are. Corax cut her off. They are violating the sacred protocol. That violation ends now. Sir, they've stopped the war. The Kahari might actually survive. The Kahari will survive or die according to their own strength, as nature intended. Admiral, you have your orders. The 7th Fleet is already en route to your position. When they arrive, you will order the human ships to withdraw. If they refuse, you will destroy them. The communication ended, leaving the command center in silence. Vexitar looked around at her crew. They all had the same expression on their faces, the look of people who had just watched something impossible happen, only to be told they had to stop it. How long until the 7th Fleet arrives? She asked quietly. Part 3. The Impossible Choice. Admiral Vexitar stood in her private quarters, staring out at the stars. It had been 18 hours since she sent the warning message to the human fleet. 18 hours since she committed treason against the galactic Concordat. She had not received a reply. A soft chime indicated someone was at her door. Enter, she called. Lieutenant Koss walked in, his silver scales reflecting the dim light. He looked tired and worried. Admiral, you need to see what's happening on Kepler 442b. More fighting? No, ma'am. The opposite. Vexitar followed Koss to the observation deck. The main display showed the Kahari homeworld, but something was different. The planet looked brighter somehow. Show me, she said. The display zoomed in on the northern continent. Where before there had been burning cities and radioactive craters, now there were lights, thousands of them, spreading across the landscape, like a growing web. What am I looking at? Vexitar asked. The humans have been working non-stop for the past day, Koss explained. They've deployed some kind of atmospheric processors to clean up the radiation. They've built temporary shelters for displaced civilians. And they've established communication networks between every major city on both continents. The display shifted to show the southern continent. The same thing was happening there. Lights where there had been darkness, order where there had been chaos. But that's not the amazing part, Koss continued. Watch this. A recording began playing. It showed a meeting room filled with Kahari from both sides of the war. Their fur was different colors. The Northerners had darker, thicker coats, while the Southerners were lighter and sleeker. For 3 years, these two groups had been trying to kill each other. Now they were sitting around the same table. "This is impossible," Vextar whispered. "How did the humans get them to work together?" "That's what's so incredible, Admiral. The humans didn't force them to do anything. They just talked to them." The recording showed a human in a simple blue uniform standing at the head of the table. She was tall and thin, with dark skin and short black hair. When she spoke, her voice was calm and confident. "My name is Dr. Sarah Kim," she said in perfect Kahari. 150 years ago, my people faced the same choice you face now. We could destroy each other over our differences, or we could choose to survive together." A Kahari with dark northern fur stood up. "But the Southerners have taken our lands. They've killed our families. And the Northerners have poisoned our waters," replied a lighter-furred Southern Kahari. "They started this war." Dr. Kim nodded calmly. "On Earth, we had the same arguments. The Western nations said the Eastern nations were taking their resources. The Eastern nations said the Western nations were trying to control them. Everyone had reasons to fight. Everyone had reasons to hate. So what did you do?" asked an elderly Kahari female. "We made a choice. We decided that survival was more important than being right. We decided that our children's future was more important than our past grievances." Vexitar watched in fascination as the human woman began showing images on a holographic display. Pictures of Earth. Not the destroyed planet from Concordate records, but a beautiful world with blue oceans and green continents. "This is our world today," Dr. Kim said. "We turned our weapons factories into hospitals. We turned our armies into rescue teams. We turned our nuclear weapons into power plants that give energy to billions of people." A young Northern Kahari leaned forward. "But how? How do you just stop fighting?" "You don't stop all at once," Dr. Kim replied. "You start small. You help one refugee. You share one meal. You save one life. Then you do it again tomorrow." The recording ended, leaving the observation deck in silence. "Admiral," Koss said quietly, "it's working. The ceasefire has held for over a day now. Both sides are working together to help the refugees. They've even started sharing food and medical supplies." Vextar felt a strange emotion she couldn't identify. Hope? Fear? Confusion? She had spent 200 years believing that species either saved themselves or died trying. The idea that outside help could work was frightening. "What else have the humans done?" she asked. Commander Drill approached them with another data pad. "They've been busy, Admiral. Very busy." She activated a holographic map showing the entire Kepler 442 system. Dozens of human ships were moving between the planet and its 3 moons. "They're setting up mining operations on the outer moon," Drill explained. "Nothing military. They're extracting materials to build permanent shelters and medical facilities on the planet." "They're planning to stay?" "It looks that way. They've also deployed some kind of early warning satellites around the system. If anyone approaches from outside, they'll know about it hours in advance." Vextar understood. The humans were preparing for the Concordate fleet. "Admiral," the communications officer called from across the room. "Message from the human fleet." "Finally. Put it through." The main display changed to show a human woman in a dark blue uniform. She had gray hair and kind eyes, but her expression was serious. When she spoke, she used the same calm, confident tone that all the humans seemed to have. "Admiral Vexitar, this is Admiral Chen of the Terran Defense Corps. Thank you for your warning about the approaching Concordate fleet." Vextar felt relief that the humans had received her message, followed immediately by fear that she had just confirmed her treason to everyone on her ship. "We appreciate your concern for the Kahari people," Admiral Chen continued. "We know this situation puts you in a difficult position. We also know you're probably wondering how we do what we do. The human admiral paused, as if choosing her words carefully. The truth is, Admiral, this isn't our first time helping a species through their trial phase. We've been doing this for over a century now. We've learned what works and what doesn't. We've learned how to help without taking away a species' independence. New image appeared on the display, a star map showing dozens of systems scattered across the galaxy. These are the worlds we've helped, Admiral Chen said. 34 different species that were facing extinction during their trial phase. According to concordant records, all of these species failed and destroyed themselves. Vextar stared at the map. 34 species. Billions of lives that the concordant thought were lost forever. They're not dead, Admiral. They're thriving. They've built their own ships, developed their own technologies, created their own civilizations. They just needed a little help to get started. Commander Drill stepped closer to the display. Admiral, if this is true, then the sacred protocol is wrong. Vextar finished. It's been wrong for 3,000 years. Admiral Chen's image continued. We know the concordant fleet is coming. We know they'll order us to leave. We also know they'll probably try to destroy us if we refuse. Admiral, Lieutenant Koss whispered, are they going to fight the entire concordant? As if she had heard him, Admiral Chen answered the question. We don't want to fight anyone, Admiral Vextar. Fighting solves nothing, but we won't abandon the Ya'adapodabi. Kahari people, we won't let them return to a war that will destroy their civilization. A new voice spoke from off-screen. Someone handed Admiral Chen a data pad, and her expression became more serious. Admiral, our long-range sensors show the concordant fleet will arrive in 39 hours. When they get here, they're going to demand that we leave. They're going to say that helping the Kahari violates the natural order of the galaxy. Admiral Chen looked directly at the camera, as if she could see through it to Vextar herself. We're going to prove them wrong. The transmission ended. Vextar stood in silence, processing what she had just learned. The humans had been secretly saving species for over a century. 34 civilizations that should have been extinct were actually alive and thriving. And now the humans were preparing to challenge the foundation of galactic law. Admiral, Commander Drill said carefully, what do we do? It was the question Vextar had been dreading. In 39 hours, the concordant enforcement fleet would arrive. 500 ships carrying enough firepower to destroy planets. They would order the humans to withdraw, and when the humans refused, they would open fire. Vextar would be expected to help them. As a concordant officer, it was her duty to enforce the sacred protocol. It was her duty to stop anyone who tried to interfere with a trial phase species. But she had seen what the humans accomplished in just 2 days. A 3-year war had ended. 2 hostile species were working together. A dying world was coming back to life. The humans had done something the concordant thought was impossible. They had helped without harming. They had interfered without destroying. Admiral, Koss prompted gently. Vextar looked around at her crew. These were good people who had served the concordant faithfully for years. They trusted her to make the right decision. She thought about the sacred protocol. 3,000 years of law and tradition, the foundation of galactic civilization. She thought about the Kahari, millions of refugees who finally had hope for the first time in years. She thought about the 34 hidden species, thriving in secret while the galaxy mourned them as dead, and she thought about the choice she had to make. Prepare a message to Concordant Command, she said finally. What should it say, Admiral? Vextar was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady and sure. Tell them the situation on Kepler 442b is more. Part 4. The Reckoning. The Concordant Enforcement Fleet arrived exactly on schedule. Admiral Vextar watched from her observation deck as 500 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect battle formation. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. A wall of metal and energy weapons stretching across the darkness of space. At the center of the formation was the massive dreadnought Eternal Justice, flagship of the 7th Fleet. Admiral Vextar had served on that ship once many years ago. She knew its power. She knew what it could do. "Admiral," Lieutenant Koss said quietly, "incoming transmission from Fleet Admiral Korax." "Put it through." The holographic display filled with the image of Admiral Korax. His red scales were almost black with anger, and his yellow eyes burned like stars. "Admiral Vextar," he said, his voice cold as the void. "Report." "Sir, the situation has developed since my last communication." "Developed how?" Vextar took a breath. This was it. The moment when she either followed orders or chose her own path. "The human intervention has been successful, sir. The Kahari War has ended. Both sides are working together now. The planet is recovering. I don't care if they've achieved galactic peace," Korax snapped. "They violated the sacred protocol. That violation ends now." "Sir, with respect, perhaps we should consider—" "There is nothing to consider." Korax's image grew larger as he leaned toward the camera. 3,000 years of law cannot be changed because one rogue species thinks they know better. Order the humans to withdraw immediately. The transmission ended. Vextar stared at the blank screen. Around her, the command crew waited in tense silence. "Admiral," Commander Drill asked. "Your orders?" Before Vextar could answer, the communications officer spoke up. "Ma'am, the human fleet is moving." The main display showed the space around Kepler 442b. The human ships were leaving their orbits around the planet and moving toward the Concordat fleet. They arranged themselves in a formation that Vextar had never seen before. Not defensive, not aggressive, but something else entirely. "What are they doing?" she wondered aloud. Her answer came when Admiral Chen's voice filled the command center. But this time, she wasn't speaking only to Vextar's ship. She was broadcasting to the entire Concordat fleet. "Admiral Korax," Chen said, her voice calm and respectful. "This is Admiral Chen of the Terran Defense Corps. We know why you're here. We know what you want us to do." A pause. Then, "We're going to have to refuse." Vextar could imagine the fury on Korax's face. No one had ever directly refused a Concordat ultimatum. No one had ever dared. "You have 10 minutes to reconsider," came Korax's reply over the fleet communication channel. "Withdraw from this system or face the consequences." "Admiral." "Korax," Chen responded. "Before you do something we'll all regret, there are some things you need to know. Things about your sacred protocol. Things about the species you think you've been protecting." The space between the two fleets remained empty and silent. Vextar realized she was holding her breath. "You have 5 minutes," Korax said. What happened next changed everything. The human ships didn't fire weapons. Instead, they began projecting massive holographic displays into space between the two fleets. Images and data filled the void, visible to every ship in both formations. 847 species, Admiral Chen's voice continued. That's how many have entered their trial phase in the 3,000 years since you created the sacred protocol. The first hologram showed a galaxy-wide map with hundreds of star systems marked in red. You've watched 847 species reach the most dangerous point in their development. You've recorded their progress. You've documented their failures. New images appeared, dead worlds, silent systems, the ruins of civilizations. According to your records, only 653 species survived. That means 194 species failed. They destroyed themselves while you watched. Vextar felt sick. She had known the numbers, but seeing them displayed like this made them real in a way that statistics never could. 194 failed species, Chen repeated. That's approximately 400 billion sentient beings who died because you were afraid to help them. That's enough! Corax's voice boomed across the communication channel. Those species failed because they weren't strong enough to survive. That's the natural order. Is it? Chen asked. The holograms changed. Now they showed new star charts. Systems that weren't in any concordant database. 34 of those failed species are still alive, Admiral Corax. We saved them. The command center fell silent. Vextar stared at the display, trying to process what she was seeing. The Zephyrians of Kepler 186f, Chen continued. Your records show they destroyed themselves in nuclear war 50 years ago. They're actually building their third space station right now. A new image appeared. A thriving world with gleaming cities and orbital platforms. The Aquarians of Wolf 359. You watched them poison their oceans and recorded their extinction 30 years ago. Last month, they launched their first interstellar exploration ship. Another image. Another living world. The crystalline collective of Ross 128. Their homeworld supposedly went dark 20 years ago due to environmental collapse. They've actually terraformed 2 new worlds and are working on a third. Image after image appeared. 34 species that should have been dead, all alive and flourishing. How? It was Commander Drill who spoke, her voice barely a whisper. Admiral Chen seemed to hear her. We learned something you never did, Admiral Corax. We learned the difference between helping and controlling. A new set of images began playing. They showed human ships arriving at troubled worlds, but not with weapons or demands. They came with medical supplies, food, and most importantly, stories. We don't give them technology they can't understand, Chen explained. We don't solve their problems for them. We just show them that survival is possible. We share our own story of how we almost destroyed ourselves and chose a different path. Vextar watched, fascinated, as the images showed humans working alongside desperate aliens. Not as conquerors or saviors, but as partners. As friends. We let them keep their pride, Chen continued. We let them find their own solutions. We just make sure they don't die while they're figuring it out. This is impossible. Corax's voice had lost some of its anger, replaced by confusion. Our monitoring stations would have detected... Your monitoring stations see what we want them to. See? Chen interrupted. We've been hiding these species from you for decades. Not because we wanted to deceive you, but because we knew you'd try to stop us. The holograms changed again. This time they showed technical specifications that made Vextar's head spin. Energy manipulation systems that bent space-time. Cloaking technologies that could hide entire star systems. Communication networks that operated outside normal space. Your technology is 1,000 years behind ours, Chen said simply. We've been watching you watch us for over a century. We know how your sensors work. We know your patrol routes. We know your response protocols. But how? Corax asked, and Vextar could hear the desperation in his voice. How did you advance so far beyond us? Because we had to, Chen replied. When you're trying to save entire civilizations without being detected, you develop better technology, very quickly. Necessity drives innovation, Admiral. You should know that. A long pause filled the space between the fleets. None of this changes anything, Corax said finally, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. The sacred protocol exists for a reason. Interference leads to dependency. Dependency leads to weakness. Weakness leads to collapse. Does it? Chen asked. The final hologram appeared. It showed the Kepler 442 system as it was now. The human fleet in orbit, the Kahari world below bright with new lights and new hope. The Kahari aren't dependent on us, Admiral. Look at what they've accomplished in just 3 days. They've ended their war. They've started rebuilding their world. They've begun working together instead of fighting. The image zoomed in to show Kahari working in the rebuilt cities, Kahari scientists analyzing human technology, Kahari leaders planning their planet's future. They're not weak, Admiral. They're stronger than they've ever been, and they did it themselves. We just gave them the chance. Admiral Vextar realized she was crying. In 200 years of service, she had never seen anything like this. The humans hadn't just violated the sacred protocol, they had proven it wrong. Admiral Corax, Chen's voice became formal, official. We're not asking for your permission. We're not asking for your approval. We're telling you how things are going to be from now on. And how is that? Corax asked. No more watching species die when they could be saved. No more sacred protocol. No more pretending that suffering builds character. The human fleet began moving, but not toward the Concordat ships. They spread out in a protective formation around Kepler 442b. You have a choice to make, Admiral, Chen said. You can try to destroy us and prove that the Concordat values law more than life. Or you can join us and help save the next species that needs saving. And if we choose to fight? Corax asked. Admiral Chen's final words sent chills down Vextar's spine. Then you'll lose, and the galaxy will know why. The communication channel went silent. In the space between two fleets, the future of galactic civilization hung in the balance. Part 5. The new Protocol 6, months later, Admiral Vextar stood on the observation deck of her new ship, the New Dawn. Through the transparent walls, she could see the blue-green world of Kepler 442b spinning peacefully in space. The planet looked completely different now. Bright cities dotted both continents, orbital elevators stretched up from the surface, and small ships moved between the world and its new space stations. The Kahari had not just survived their trial, phase. They had mastered it. Admiral, came a familiar voice from behind her. Lieutenant Koss, now promoted to commander, approached with a data pad in his hands. The morning reports are ready. Tell me the good news first, Vextar said with a smile. The Kahari launched their first interstellar probe yesterday. It's heading for the nearest star system to begin their own exploration program. They want to find other species who might need help. Vextar nodded. That was exactly what the humans had predicted would happen. Species that were helped during their trial phase didn't become dependent. They became helpers themselves. And the other news? The Galactic Council meeting is in 3 days. Both factions will be there. Vextar sighed. The Galactic Concordat had split after the events at Kepler 442b. The traditionalists, led by Admiral Corax, still believed in the sacred protocol. They maintained that interfering with trial phase species was wrong, no matter the results. The reformists, led by Vextar herself, had joined with the humans to create something new. They called it the Intervention Corps, a joint organization dedicated to helping species survive their most dangerous period. How many ships will Corax bring? She asked. Intelligence estimates about 300 vessels from 12 different species, all traditionalist worlds. And us. 450 ships. But Admiral Koss looked worried. Most of our fleet is made up of human vessels. The other Concordat species are still deciding which side to join. Vextar understood his concern. The split in the Concordat had created the biggest political crisis in galactic history. For 3,000 years, all advanced species had followed the same basic law. Don't interfere with developing civilizations. Now half the galaxy was saying that law was wrong. Any word from the neutral worlds? She asked. A few. The Altarian. Republic is sending observers. The Vegan Trade Federation wants to hear both sides before deciding. The crystal entities of Sigma Draconis are, well, no one really knows what they're thinking. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. The wall display activated to show the face of Admiral Chen. The human leader looked tired but determined. Admiral Vextar, Chen said, are you ready for tomorrow's mission? As ready as we can be. The Kahari volunteers are excited to help. Good. The Zephyrians are standing by as well. Having species that we've already helped speak at the council meeting should make a strong impression. Vextar nodded. That was the plan. Instead of just talking about their success, they would show it. 3 species that had been extinct, according to concordant records, would address the council directly. Any last-minute changes to our presentation? She asked. Just one, Chen replied. We've received a request from a trial phase species in the Tau Ceti system. They're asking for help. Vexatar raised an eyebrow. Asking for help? How do they even know we exist? Word travels fast, apparently. The Aquarians told the Crystalline Collective, who told someone else, who told someone else. Now there are dozens of developing species who know that help is available if they need it. This was something the humans hadn't expected. They had planned to work in secret, saving species one at a time. Instead, their success was creating a network of communication between worlds that had never spoken before. What do you want to do? About Tau Ceti? Vextar asked. Help them, of course, but we'll wait until after the council meeting, one crisis at a time. The transmission ended, leaving Vextar alone with her thoughts. She walked to the central display and called up a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked the locations of species currently in their trial phase. Blue dots showed the worlds that had been saved by human intervention. Green dots represented the traditional concordant species. There were a lot more blue dots than there had been 6 months ago. Admiral, Commander Koss said, there's something else you should know. What is it? We've been monitoring concordant communications. Admiral Korax has been very busy. He's been visiting every traditionalist world, trying to build support for military action against us. Military action? He's calling it Restoration Protocol. The idea is to use force to stop all interference with trial phase species and return the galaxy to the old ways. Vextar felt a chill run down her spine. How much support does he have? More than we'd like. The older species especially are concerned about the changes we're making. They're afraid that if we abandon the sacred protocol completely, we'll go back to the old days of galactic war. And what do you think? Koss was quiet for a moment. I think they're scared, Admiral. For 3,000 years, they've believed that watching species die was necessary for the greater good. Now we're proving that they were wrong. That's a hard thing to accept. The next day, Vextar stood in the council chamber on the neutral world of Galactic Station 1. The chamber was enormous, with seats for representatives from over 200 different species. Today, it was packed. Admiral Korax sat with the traditionalist faction on one side of the chamber. His red scales were polished to a brilliant shine, and his uniform displayed every medal and honor he had earned in 3 centuries of service. Admiral Chen sat with the reformist faction on the other side. She wore a simple blue uniform with no decorations except for a small pin showing the Earth-Moon system. Between them, in the center of the chamber, stood 3 beings who shouldn't have existed. Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrians spoke first. Her blue-scaled form glowed softly in the chamber's lights as she addressed the council. 50 years ago, my people were dying, she said, her voice clear and strong. Our world was burning in nuclear fire. Our children were starving in underground shelters. According to your records, we destroyed ourselves. Murmurs ran through the chamber. Many of the council members had never seen a Zephyrian before. They were supposed to be extinct. But we didn't die. Veltar continued. The humans came to us in our darkest hour. They didn't give us orders. They didn't take control of our world. They simply showed us that survival was possible. She activated a holographic display showing modern Zephyr. Beautiful cities, green forests, clear blue oceans. This is our world today. We rebuilt it ourselves. We chose peace ourselves. We reached for the stars ourselves. The humans just made sure we lived long enough to make those choices. Admiral Korax stood up. With respect, Ambassador, your survival proves nothing. One success doesn't justify abandoning 3,000 years of proven law. The second speaker stepped forward. Captain Reef Song of the Aquarians, her translucent form shimmering like water. "One success?" she asked. "Admiral, there are 34 of us. 34 species that your sacred protocol condemned to death. 34 civilizations that are now thriving because someone chose to help instead of watch." She gestured to the display, which now showed dozens of worlds, all alive, all growing, all flourishing. Each of us has developed our own technology, our own culture, our own way of life. We're not copies of humanity. We're not dependent on them. We're ourselves, but alive instead of dead. The third speaker was Dr. Crystalmind of the Crystalline Collective. Her body was made of living diamond that caught and reflected the chamber's lights in beautiful patterns. "The humans taught us something important," she said, her voice like musical chimes. "They taught us that strength comes from helping others, not from watching them suffer." She pointed to a section of the display showing the newest development. Ships from saved species working together to help other worlds in crisis. We are not just survivors anymore. We are helpers. The Kahari have already volunteered to assist the next species that needs aid. The Aquarians are developing new medical technologies to share with developing worlds. My own people are creating communication networks to connect isolated civilizations. Dr. Crystalmind turned to face Admiral Corax directly. "Your sacred protocol was designed to create strong, independent species. But strength without compassion is just brutality. Independence without cooperation is just loneliness." The chamber fell silent. Vextar looked around at the faces of the council members. Some looked convinced, others looked confused. A few looked angry. Admiral Corax stood again. "Fine words," he said. "But what happens when these helped species face their next crisis? What happens when the humans aren't there to save them?" It was Admiral Chen who answered. She stood slowly, her calm presence filling the chamber. "They save themselves," she said simply, "and then they save others." She activated a new display showing recent events throughout the galaxy. Last month, the Zephyrians helped stop a war on Proxima Centauri B. The Aquarians provided medical aid to plague victims in the Vega system. The Crystalline Collective shared agricultural technology with a starving world in the Tau Ceti system. The display showed ship after ship, species after species, all working together to help others. "This is what happens when you teach people that compassion is strength," Chen continued. "They become compassionate.